I just want to warn everyone now before we get into the egg salad of this video that there will be light spoilers in this video regarding the most recent Masters LAN. I'm not going to crack the egg on who won, but it might be a little obvious when I talk about the teams in a little bit more detail, so be sure to cover your ears or exit before you get hurt. But today we are talking about our rotund aristocrat, Bom King, and how this LAN was shaped by this champion, and whether or not he ultimately ruined the tournament and made it a bad egg. Now, it would make sense from a lore perspective as a tyrant, and a visual perspective looking like Dr. Robotnik, also known as Eggman in the Sonic series, that Bom King might just be a rotten egg. Egg puns out of the way, something excellent may be in the description of this video. Something hunted. Now anyway, in the tournament, Bom King had a 100% pick rate, so he was in every match in the tournament. He was literally center stage in the side of criticism and slight despair from the fans watching the tournament, and some frustrations at the matches simply being a coin toss to see who won by getting the first pick. In the early matches of day one, this did seem to be true, with most teams that picked Bom King being pretty much assured a victory. Now, why was Bom King picked so much in this tournament? Well, in OB46, Bom King received a buff to their sticky bomb, hit consistency, and lag compensation. And in earlier patches, the bomb's radius and damage fall off had been buffed. It meant that Bom King was pretty much a damage machine in the previous patch, and I had made a video on how unstoppable they were and how I thought they were top tier. Called it! Not only that though, teams had begun to take Bom King seriously and get practice with him. Bom King has a huge utility with his stuns, with Grumpy Bomb and King Bomb. He also has ridiculous flank potential with Accelerant to both get in and out of fights at ease. His high health also gives him sustain, and he does have one of those ultimates in the game that can win a point, with large damage and a stun to boot. It was actually interesting to see players who vowed away from Bom King as their worst champion, and someone they didn't usually play, like Bugsy for example, picking him up in this tournament. And also at a high level in the tournament, there were some cold, calculated combos executed with the BK. There were lots of doorways pre-stacked with full salvos of sticky bombs on the ally side, so when an enemy stumbled through, it would be an insta-kill, especially with the extended damage radius of the bombs. This was also comboed with things like a Makoa hook to drag enemies unwillingly, kicking and screaming over the traps to an explosive Doom Megaman style. If there was one thing, I'd say this helped atone from the reduced team composition diversity in the game, as it was a spectacle worth watching. Also, whilst a lot of the earlier games did seem to be heavily sided with a BK first pick winning, when the teams paired were of different levels of experience in the tournaments, it ended up more favouring the more veteran teams to the tournaments, and they were able to take victory off some of the newcomers through sheer level of play. Even so, more often than not, BK came out on top, and was obviously held in high regard as the insta-lock each time for every team. I think there's actually one occasion where he wasn't insta-locked and the team lost pretty dismally. However, you might be thinking now, well, I thought I saw a nerf of Bom King in OB47, the current patch. And yup, you'd be right. He did receive a damage fall-off which was increased, and it was essentially a nerf to damage in an area, and meant that you had to be more accurate with your shots. It also makes it harder to pull off the traps on doorways unless they walk directly over it, but hi-rez decided to roll with the OB46 patch where Bom King was massively overperforming. Now, I don't know whether this was a decision because of the stability of the patch. During the weekend of the LAN, the servers kept going down on live, and it wasn't clear whether it was the servers themselves imploding or something in the game causing it. And whilst personally I haven't had any performance issues, other players, especially in lower settings, have reported a few things. Also, just in general, in esports games, tournaments will occasionally look to play older versions of the game the pros have been prepared for and have trained for if a patch goes up live to those matches and to a tournament. In this occasion though, when the champion was so out of whack and shown to be overperforming, it does beg the question of whether it was right to push out on OB46 and made the tournament that little less fun, fair, and generally open to some criticism from the viewers. The thing with OB47 was that the changes to the meta weren't sweeping, apart from the Bom King nudges, and honestly at this point the pros can adapt, and would have been playing the patch the prior week, the few days running up to the tournament. Perhaps we still would have seen Bom King doing well, but not to the extent of 100% pick rate, or at least the first pick of every game. Now, in its defense, and thanks to a helpful chart by Kyle Zenho on Reddit displaying all of the pick rates of the champions of the tournament, Bom King wasn't the only champion that made it into an overwhelming majority of games. Makoa 98.3%, Barik and Charlene 96.6%, Maldamba 86.4%, and Ying 84.7%. In general, at the very high levels of play, teams will squeeze the strongest meta picks, combinations, and lineups for everything they are worth. This isn't just limited to Paladins, but MOBAs, Overwatch, even shooter games like Counter-Strike have meta on what weapons to buy in what quantity, and some are hardly ever touched. It is a constant struggle for developers to try and drag more elements into the meta, and especially for hero-based games, it is getting as many heroes or champions into the mix as possible. But one buff here, nerf there, often brings a character or sets of characters to the forefront and pushes others back. But I do still think that the Bom King in the last patch was a bit of a red flag in general play and in tournaments like the ESL, where it was becoming more obvious how big of a pick it was. So in the end, did Bom King win the tournament and ultimately ruin it? Well, actually, in the finals, it wasn't won by the first pick Bom King, although the team that won still won their BK first picks. The runners-up actually had more Bom King first picks more often, and one of the matches that stood out was where the winning team all picked up Resilience, the item that reduces stun times, and other crowd control that Bom King has buckets of. And this wasn't just for the Bom King, but their lineup generally, with Maldamba, Mini Stuns and Dread Serpent being countered, led them to victory. Now, if the runners-up that lost that match had a Ying instead of the Maldamba, and their lineup wasn't so crowd control focused, we might have seen a different outcome, but it was interesting to see a slight outdrafting and itemization win to counter the power of the BK in the patch. Ultimately, the winners won off the back of some high-level play and old lineups they were used to and defied the meta expectations. But also worth mentioning was the runners-up did have some stand-ins and weren't at their full capacity. Now, just briefly, what effect did it have on viewers? Well, there was a lot of disillusioned people in the chat, in the forums and Reddit on the first pick meta being so predictable and leading to games being easy to predict and less fun to watch. And also frustrations that this could lead to their favourite teams going out by a coin toss. I think in general, the more diverse and wild the lineups are, the less easy to predict and more fun to watch matches become. And the viewership for this tournament also seemed anecdotally less than hi-rez. And I can't completely remember what the hits were and the stream numbers were, but in the stream at the weekend, they were getting about 3,000 watches on Twitch on both the hi-rez account and the Paladins main game account. And this viewership might not have just been caused by this Bom King pick. There were also some technical difficulties in day one where the facecam meta became a meme, where some matches started up with no gameplay but facecams, and other times there were big delays, and to the detriment of Vox vocal cords, he was often left talking tactics for some pretty marathon-esque periods. Either way, putting this aside and how this tournament ran out and its issues, it is great to see tournaments this big with prize pools so massive. Great casters like Vox and Rainday, and at the end of the day, they can perhaps learn from this going forward on looking a bit closer at the patches pushed to tournaments and how they were doing during their lifetime. Anyway, what did everyone else think of the tournament? Did you enjoy watching it? Were you one of the people put off by the meta picks? And would you tune in again to follow the DreamHack tournament closely, for example? Be sure to let me know in the comments section below. Be sure to collect the egg link if you are doing the Reddit Easter egg hunt in the description, hint hint. And like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more of my content, and until next time everybody, I've been Joshino.